Okay, well, welcome everyone to part one of the MotorTraxx to MaxxTraxx 4-part webinar series. I am so excited to be doing this webinar today. We have been doing webinars on our on a weekly basis every Wednesday since I think we started this back in February was our first one, and they've really been outstanding. People have really been contributing and asking questions, and I'm going to ask that of you guys today. So I'll be pausing after every little section to see if there's any questions. Please don't hold back, because your questions make this so much more valuable. So a little bit about myself. I have been a Scotch Systems user, a MotorTraxx user, since 1992. And I am very passionate about MotorTraxx, so I understand how you all feel, especially since many of you people have been using the program for almost 2 decades. I also sold the system in 1997, 1998, and have always used the accounting portion of the software. So I do understand kind of the trepidation of changing. Okay, I'm going to check real quick. You have a little bit of background noise in here, guys. Let's see if we can clear that up. Okay, and just so you guys know, if you do put us on hold, sometimes it will put your hold music into the webinar. But what we are going to be doing today, first of all, I want to give you a little bit of background about me. We're going to go over the Getting Started Guide, the Getting Started Workbook, tell you a little bit about the training videos we now have available, and how to use the user manual. So actually, my background of late with MaxxTraxx is I went to work for a shop in 2007, and I told them I would not work for the shop if they didn't have Scotch Systems. So honestly, I went to Mark and Rex and said, okay, guys, I'm ready. Load me up on MotorTraxx. And they said, we're not going to do that. And I said, what do you mean you're not going to load me up on MotorTraxx? They said, if you want to use our system, you have to use MaxxTraxx. So I was not ready. I was not really interested. I thought I trained myself over a period of 3 days by myself, and I started using MaxxTraxx January 2nd, 2008. Longest month of my life. So what I did is actually came to work with these guys in the summer of 2008. Yeah.
There's something going on in the background that's making you really difficult to hear.
Yeah, I think we're getting some feedback here. Let's see here if we can fix that. Hold on a sec and see where this is coming from.
What disappeared?
Oh, found it.
Oh.
Just a sec, guys.
There, it's gone.
Okay, that's you, Kathy. Kathy, if you want to talk on the call, I'm going to need you to call in on your telephone because we're getting a lot of feedback. Again, guys, that's why we wanted most people to dial in. So like I said, I went to write the user manual, 388 pages, took 7 months to do, but it gave me a good background to understand exactly what was the logic and what was the philosophy that these guys had behind the program. And once I understood that, boy, oh boy, was it easier. So then I've combined that with, in the last year, I think I've trained a little over 30 shops, MotorTraxx users, on MaxxTraxx. So I've kind of gone through the whole process of what it's like to, from the day that you even start considering it, to getting your hardware, to getting your people trained, preparing your data to be converted, going from MotorTraxx to MaxxTraxx. And I've made all the boo-boos about, all the things that you would do in MotorTraxx. And there's a few things that are different in MaxxTraxx, and I can share that all with you guys. But I think the most important part of this whole experience was we created the Getting Started Guide. It's also called the Getting Started Workbook. And out of this guide, we have actually come up with 10 steps that we feel is going to take you really from this call to going live. So let me go ahead and bring that up real quick. So here is the Getting Started Guide. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. And okay, so page 1 essentially just is an intro, but most important, I want to point out here, burden of preparation is on you. If you don't prepare, this will not be a pleasant experience. And I speak from experience because I thought I was prepared, but I really, really wasn't. So what we've done is we've come up with these 10 steps. First of all, we need to verify your hardware and make sure you meet the minimum specifications. We no longer will install MaxxTraxx on a system that doesn't meet these because you're not going to be happy. It's not going to be reliable. We want you to have the speed, and frankly, the installation won't work if you don't have enough processing speed and enough memory. So we'll talk about those details here in a minute. And, of course, the backup. I know, and I'll say because I used to be one of them, there are people out there that still don't have a regular backup. And we really, really want to make sure, while you're making all these changes, let's just go ahead and get you set up on a real reliable backup. So that's really our first step. The second step is arranging training in a practice version. Now, what I really recommend, and I did with all 30 of the shops that I did, actually minus one, all those shops got a practice version. Now, by having a practice version of MaxxTraxx loaded, you accomplish a couple of things. Well, number one, we make sure that you meet the minimum hardware requirements. That's number one, very, very key. Number two, by having a practice version, you get to learn on your own stuff. You get to learn with your own customers, their own vehicles. You get to use your own labor codes. You have your parts inventory loaded on that practice version. And a big part of this, the third reason why I think this is so important to have, is that you get to see what your data looks like converted. And there are some things that don't come over. There are some things that need to be entered manually. And there are some things that need to be modified once they come over into MaxxTraxx. So I think having a practice version is just a brilliant idea. That way you get to try everything out, hit all the buttons. You can't break it. And what we do after you have a practice version, once you're trained, you're comfortable, you're ready to go live, we wipe it clean. And then you start on the day that you're like, okay, I'm going to start running my business with MaxxTraxx. We start you with a fresh copy of MaxxTraxx. And, of course, it's already loaded, ready to go. So that's step two. Step three is understanding how this workbook works with these checklists. And I'll get to that here in just a minute. And what I recommend is you actually go through the checklist, the setup checklist in your practice version. It really gives you an opportunity to learn all the different features. And then once you wipe out your old material, all your practice material, you may be saying, well, shoot, I got to set it up again. Fact of the matter is, once you've done it the first time, it really takes about 10 minutes to do once you're ready to rock and roll on your go-live date. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then we have the individual tasks that I'll show on the checklist that correspond with our user manual. Now, I do have a setup video that you can refer to, but that user manual will give you in detail how to set up each different step, okay? So that's number 4. Number 5, really important for MotorTraxx user, and we're going to do a little bit of that today, is reviewing your conversion details. MaxxTraxx is not a Windows version of MotorTraxx. I want to make sure that's clear. And for me, I'll tell you that was a little bit nerve-wracking for me. There were some serious differences. But you know what? As long as you're aware of them, it's no big deal. And, of course, MaxxTraxx is like 1,000 times better than MotorTraxx, which I guarantee you all will find and you all will feel once you've used it for a couple of months. So number 6 is actually more for new users. It's gathering your information that needs to be put in the system. But since you're going to have converted data over from MotorTraxx to MaxxTraxx, not as big a deal. Number 7 is just when you guys are ready to go. You just need to complete the order form and sign the release, and I'll show you that release here at the end of this Getting Started guide. And that just ensures that you understand the minimum hardware requirements, you have trained everybody that needs to be trained, you know how to use the user manual. Not that you use it very often, and some people learn that way, some people don't. But that's real important, and it is required before we do your go-live installation. And then the 8th step is we either install you, which you'll probably be installed already because your MotorTraxx user's on a practice version, but then we reconvert your latest and greatest from MotorTraxx one day, and then the next morning is when you start running your business with MaxxTraxx. And then number 9, you just need to follow the setup procedures that are on the checklist that we're going to review here in just a moment, and then you're live. You're rocking and rolling, and we're here with you the whole, through the whole process. So let me stop here after you guys have a little bit better understanding of the 10-step process. Any questions? I said, I definitely want everybody to get a copy of this, and I'll email this after this webinar so you guys have the latest and greatest Getting Started workbook or Getting Started guide to be able to review this in detail on your own. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. You know, we do have Dale on the call with us, of course. I'm sure over the years, most of you people have had an opportunity to talk with Dale since he's been with Scott Systems for 15 years. Do you guys have any questions for him? Kind of a little experience-wise. Okay. Okay. So just so you know, Marianne, I had you on mute there for a minute, and Rosemary, you are live now as well, and Walter, you're live now as well. Just as people join a little later, their phones are muted. And Christy, who just joined, I now have you. And unfortunately, Kathy, I am going to have you on mute because we get a little bit too much feedback from your speakers. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next section. What we're going to talk about on the next page of our Getting Started workbook is our hardware requirements. Now, this is just a guideline. We do have our, our recommendations, but then we also have the minimums in here of what you can get away with, and they're different for your server versus your workstation. You guys can review this in detail, but a couple of things that I want to bring up. The memory, getting additional RAM these days is dirt cheap. And boy, what a difference. If few of you already have worked with me, you know me. I am not a technical person. I'm a user, and I've been on your side of the desk or your side of the telephone to Scott Systems for 15 plus years. So I can say from a user perspective that the RAM makes all the difference. And I'm thinking, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything to me. It really does. So if you have the money and you guys are going to go through and maybe make some upgrades to your equipment, your hardware is worth the money. So I just want to say that. Other thing I want to mention, a lot of people try to do this, there are no wireless networks. We don't support wireless networks, okay, unless you guys are on terminal service or Citrus, okay? And as we note here at the bottom of the page, we don't install the MaxxTraxx on a computer that doesn't meet the minimum hardware requirements, and that includes the practice version, because it would just be frustrating to you guys. I know Dale, Dale, I'm pulling you out here. I'm throwing you under the bus. Dale was working on the slowest darn system. I don't know how he did it for so long. And, it just makes all the difference that you guys just step up and do it. Am I right, Dale, or not, huh?
I was trying, running on half a gig, it still works, but it's like working on the old 2400 baud modem and waiting for the screen to come up. And there was, so yeah, if you can afford the memory, put as much on as you can afford. It'll be that much faster.
Absolutely.
Sabrina, can I add something to that as well?
Yes, Mark. Yeah.
Also, Dell Computers has the best, cheapest computers you can buy anywhere. And literally, they're a week away. You call them up. You can buy yourself a computer. If you've already got the flat screen, you can buy yourself a computer that will work fine with MaxxTraxx for less than $300, like $250. If you want to get more than that, that's fine. But anything that they sell pretty much is going to work just great for MaxxTraxx. And so you're talking, sometimes it's going to cost you $20 or $50 or more to put memory in, or you could buy a brand new computer for $229 or $250 or $300. It's a great way to go.
Right. Yeah. Strongly recommend it.
Could I ask, this is Rosemary from Roger Cross Tires. Could I ask a question about the backups?
Sure. Actually, Rosemary, you know the Getting Started workbook.
What do you recommend for backups? Do you base the frequency of backing up on volume or just frequency, or could you elaborate a little bit more on that? We do ours. We try to do it at once every couple of weeks, but I'm not sure if that's quite enough.
Rex, I'm going to let you take this one because I know what you're going to say.
Well, what I was going to say is really I don't see much reason for backing up. We've never seen anybody lose any data for fire, floods, or theft. So I don't know why you're backing up at all. Seriously, I'm sorry, I was being facetious, but once every couple of weeks, not nearly enough. We offer a backup system in MaxxTraxx. It's built in. And you can set this thing up so it will back up to another of your workstations, so that if the file server goes down, you'll still have a backup on one of the other workstations, and we can work with that. But we also have off-site backups where we will set it up so that it will back up on our servers for a small monthly fee on that. But anytime you go more than a day, unless you're a really, really slow shop, if anything happens to that data and you've got to go back and you've got to re-enter a week's worth of data, it's really disruptive. It's difficult to do, and you just don't want to have to go through it. So you should be backing up at least every day, and we can set it up so that it will do that for you automatically. You won't even have to think about it. And it's built into the system.
And then when we're doing backups, do we have to be out of the system in order to do that?
No, you no longer have to. In MotorTraxx, you did. It wouldn't back up data files that were open, but with MaxxTraxx, it can back up with all the data flying and everything, and it's SQL is much more forgiving for that sort of thing, so that's less of an issue.
Right.
I'd like to add something there too, if I could. You know, we have a new backup system that does online backups to our servers. It also works for MotorTraxx too. So any of you that are not backing up regularly now, you can sign up for the optional online backups through us, and it will back up either your MaxxTraxx or your MotorTraxx. It doesn't matter. And there's actually enough room on there that it'll also back up your QuickBooks, or it'll back up your documents or whatever, so that you have the ability to do backups of all your major data, including MotorTraxx and MaxxTraxx, through our online backup service if you choose to. That's available now for even MotorTraxx users.
So that's on our website, guys. I'm showing you here. And look, you can choose monthly plans depending on how much data. You'd be surprised how much fits on 4 gig. It really is amazing. But you have all these options here you can see on the website. So I am just on our website under Products and Services. It's called Offsite Data Backup. Okay. So it's built in. This is so nice. In MaxxTraxx, it's built right in here. You can see how we just set this up, and it runs. We can just do a backup. I could do it right now. It backs up whatever time you have it set at night. And the way, and Rhonda does most of our installations actually, and the way that she sets it up is it backs up not only to our offsite backup, but it also backs up, if you're on a network, to one of the other workstations. So you have a lot of redundancy. Before they had this online backup, when I was running MaxxTraxx in the shop I was working at in 2008, we actually had it backing up to a workstation and backing up to an external hard drive. And frankly, did I take that hard drive home with me every day? No. So if somebody stole it or we had a fire, I would be, up a creek. But at least if you're doing something, and, Rex has, I cannot tell you how many stories, how many sagas I've heard about people not doing their backup and having to recreate databases and trying to salvage hard drives. And a lot of the times, frankly, you can't. So very, very important. I don't want to belabor it, but it's important.
The backup also doesn't just do the last day. It keeps the last 7 days. So if you have a virus that you catch this morning and you don't realize it till later, and so you do your backup, or maybe it happened a couple days ago, we can actually take you back to before the virus ever hit. So if you have corrupted data or a virus, we could take you back up to 7 days in the past to get you back to good data if that particular issue happens. So that's another thing to think about too, is that just a regular backup, if you keep overwriting your same backup, you're only good for 1 day back. And in this system, it allows you to keep a bunch of them to go back to if you need.
Very good. And
okay, great to know.
Thanks, Rosemary. I appreciate you bringing that up. Any more questions? I'm going to want to always stop because you guys know I get on a roll, obviously. Any other questions? Okay, I'm unmuting a few more people that have come on. John and Linda. Oh, great to have you on, Linda. So we have a few more folks on, just if you have any questions. So next thing I wanted to cover today in our webinar was our next one is the MotorTraxx converted data. I kind of was thinking, do I really want to go over this specifically? Because I am going to go over this in great detail on our part 4 of the webinar series. But I just want to go back and a couple highlights. Again, MaxxTraxx is not a Windows version of MotorTraxx. However, we've taken all of our features and experience, and we've, of course, built all the great features into MaxxTraxx. The workflow is a little bit different, I would say, and I'm talking from a user's perspective, so Mark, Rex, or Dale jump in. But for me, and you'll notice this, and I'll talk about these more in the next 2 webinars when we talk about workflow and talk about accounting, is that number one, you have to put in a reason for service, which is different than MotorTraxx. And on that reason for service, you put on your parts and labor. And the other main thing is there's no daily book. Well, I am an accounting person. I am a penny pincher. And when I didn't hear about a daily book, I got a little bit nervous. And I thought, well, how is this all going to work? Well, once you guys understand this, and like I said, I'm not going to go into too much detail today, everything in MaxxTraxx, because it's on a really, really ruggedized, stable SQL database, everything is in real time. The second that you close a repair order, it posts everything to your GL right there. It takes stuff out of inventory. It puts things in your customer vehicle, their vehicle history. Everything is in real time. It's not batched anymore like it was in MotorTraxx. And the nicest part of that is, let's call a spade a spade. We all make mistakes in the software program. Well, I certainly did. And if I made a boo-boo in MotorTraxx, I'd have to call tech support, have them hook up. It was like parting the Red Sea to fix anything that I did wrong. In MaxxTraxx, you just void it and redo it because it's on a SQL database. So, there's so many great reasons to go to MaxxTraxx, but from an accounting perspective, that was one of my favorites. So, I don't want to go over this in, like I said, too much detail. I'm going to do this in number 4, but, let me go ahead and make this a little bigger so you guys can see it. And I do want you to take a little time to read these. Of course, company information comes over. Customer records all come over. Vehicle records are all converted. I'm just scanning through here real quick. Everything that's on your service counter at the date of your conversion comes over. All those open invoices, you just have to re-enter your parts and labor. Not a big deal. Have to reselect your sales tax. Again, not a big deal. But your labor services come over, your sublets come over, parts, of course, come over with your parts inventory. Now, what doesn't come over, and probably the number one reason I think to have a copy of MotorTraxx handy, is the parts purchase history. Does not come over. It's not converted. And I don't know about you guys, but we had a fair amount of warranty work. So if I needed to look up and see where did I buy this part, who did I buy it from, and what was that vendor's invoice number, you would have to run back into MotorTraxx to look up that parts purchase history. But, of course, going forward, you'll be generating parts purchase history in MaxxTraxx. So, again, a very important reason that you would want to keep a copy of MotorTraxx. Kits are converted, but they come over in a modified version. Not a big deal if most people either don't use kits or only have like 15 or 20. But we've had a few users, and Rex, I'm sure you know who I'm talking about, few users specifically who have several hundreds of kits. And when we say that they have to be changed over, a labor placeholder line is created because there's not a reason for service in MotorTraxx, but there is in MaxxTraxx. So it creates its own reason for service part holder. So you just have to go into each kit and just move the parts onto the labors. And we'll talk more about that in definitely next week's webinar. But that you do have to do. It's a little modification there. Let's zip down through here. Employee records are partially converted. You have to add in a little bit more information like their pay type, commissions, their tax withholding settings, that kind of thing. And a couple cool things in MaxxTraxx is that a customer can also be, an employee can also be a customer, and it can also be a vendor. So employees that get advances or charge work at the shop, you can tie that into their paycheck. So you can, let's say, deduct $50 a week out of their paycheck to pay their bill. Conversely, a customer can be a vendor. An employee can be a vendor. You can have all sorts of combinations here. So you actually have the ability to formally do trade, which we did a fair amount of. I'm sure you guys have too. You can actually say, well, this guy who did plumbing on the shop got his brakes done. We actually have a feature in there to be able to process that trade very, very smoothly. It's so exciting. I can't wait to show you guys how that works. But great feature.
That definitely is something I'm going to enjoy because that's exactly what I have to do every payroll. Go fish out their accounts receivable account, hunt down what they've purchased, make sure everything's closed. if it was linked, that would cut out a whole couple of processes of my payroll.
Absolutely. It was so funny, Rosemary. I was talking to Dale about this yesterday, and it takes a little bit of tuning, fine-tuning, when you do the setup. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have another webinar specifically around this subject, probably the second or the third week in September. So definitely want you guys to sit in on that one if you want to use this feature, because it's a little tricky. I'm not going to say that it's real easy. You know, I'll be honest, most people get it. Took me a little longer. But once you get it set up correctly, it is a snap. But if you don't have it set up quite right, it could be an issue. Okay, so there we go. People putting us on hold and putting hold music in there.
And I think it's one of us.
I think it is one of us.
Yeah, it's Mark. Can you mute Mark?
Yes, I can.
And I'd like to add just a note on that, especially to Rosemary. If any of you do your conversion to MaxxTraxx before we get around to doing that webinar on that thing, please call one of us and make sure that we get it set up right from the get-go, rather than waiting until some transactions have already occurred and we have to merge records. It'll be much easier for all of us.
Absolutely. Yeah, good point, Rex. Thanks.
Thank you. We're planning on this.
What was that, Rosemary?
Uh-oh. She went away.
We're planning on doing that in December, making our actual conversion. We have to practice.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we'll definitely have that available for you by then. But it is something, guys, you remember, you want to do right at the beginning, okay? That's something we want to kind of close out. And I don't want to go into all the details here, but we actually get rid of their employee record and create their employee record from, okay. We actually create their employee record from their customer record, and by linking those, that's how we do that, okay? Accounts receivable, accounts payable all come over. The only thing I want to remind you guys is these come out as a total balance due. For example, my biggest vendor was WorldPack. If you were to convert from your MotorTraxx data to MaxxTraxx, you're going to have, like, let's say, $9,817.52, one single invoice to WorldPack, and that represents all the outstanding invoices that you had to pay that vendor. Now, what I did, and I recommended all these other shops that I was doing training with, is you can still reconcile it in MotorTraxx, but then pay it out of MaxxTraxx the month that you go live. Or you could actually go in and enter them all manually, but I don't know about you guys. Some of my vendors I had literally could have 100 invoices in a month. That's no exaggeration. Same for accounts receivable. So some people, I would say more people would re-enter accounts receivable detail rather than just go with this one outstanding amount, and the reason why is you want it to show up on statements. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to clarify on that.
Does.
Okay. And then we have bank balances. Bank balances don't come over. These are entered through the bank reconciliation, and we do have training videos for that. Your entire general ledger needs to be set up. Now, this actually, I don't know about you guys, is kind of a blessing for some shops from MotorTraxx. I have a list here of how many people have a current balance sheet in MotorTraxx. And, you know, what are we at, about maybe half? But I'm looking, yeah, about half, I'd say, have a current balance sheet. The beauty of that is if you have some stuff that you've just never been able to clean up in MotorTraxx on your general ledger, or if it's out of balance, there's just no way to ever figure that out, and I've seen it happen, it gives you a fresh start. So it's kind of cool. So, but it's very, very easy to use, and you guys will learn that any boo-boos that you make are so easy to fix in MaxxTraxx. Really, there's only two things. I'm just throwing it out here, and I'll repeat this every single webinar we have through the whole four-part series. Two things you can't undo. Once you void an RO, it's gone forever. Number two, once you post a restock parts invoice to a vendor account, the only way to correct it is just to write a credit for it, back it out. No big deal. Everything else you can fix. And you can fix at a later date. Again, the beauty of SQL. Any custom product codes that you have in MotorTraxx are converted, but if you have individualized general ledger account numbers for those, Of course, you have to recreate those custom accounts on the general ledger itself and then reassign that general ledger account to those product codes. And then pretty much your default account postings, they are pretty much automated, but if you guys want to change those around a bit, you can. A very important note here, just before you do your conversion, and again, I'm jumping ahead, we're going to, of course, review all this in part 4, you just need to close your daily book and print out all your financials from MotorTraxx before we do your final data conversion. Nothing you have to worry about for the practice version. But even if you don't use all these reports, 99% of the time you won't need to, I still would print them all out just because I don't know, I'm always worried about not having those handy. So that's a little bit about what converts and what doesn't. And I really wanted to, any questions on that, guys? What do you think about that?
I have a question on converting the kits and the amount of time that might take. I have 1,100 kits.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, tell me a little bit, how big are they typically? How many elements are in each kit?
They can be from a single labor and a part to, extensive labor and 30 parts on them.
Okay. You know what I'm just going to do? Great question. I'm going to go ahead and show you really quick what this looks like. What you would have to do is actually go into Manager, click on Manage Kits. And in this kit, let's say I just double-click on any one of them. Let's say this one. All you have to do is maybe add a new labor line. I'll just put one in here just for fun. And then you just have to drag these parts down there and then click OK. That's it. So and depending on how many parts, now if you have 15 parts, you can see the dragging, dropping would probably take, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. But, most important is I want everybody just to be aware what they're coming into. This process is way more smooth than you would ever believe as long as you know what you're getting into and you know what needs to be done. You don't want to get set up and do something and realize that, you've worked 3 weeks now and you have been charging the wrong sales tax amount on your ROs. So those kinds of things. So that's all that's involved in that. It's not a big deal, but it is something I wanted to make sure you're aware of.
Can I also
if I can
go
ahead.
Well, okay, I was just going to say that I notice in a lot of cases when I go on to someone who has converted that they haven't even bothered to change it. They're throwing the kits on just as they come across. So they'll get their labor comes across and it stands alone, and then there's another labor which is the labor that we've created to hang the parts on, and they just leave it like that, and it works fine for them. I always encourage them to, clean it up as they go along, but it will still work for you. It's not quite as clean as it will be once you get it adjusted a little bit. But all your information does go on to an invoice, and it's just fine. And as I say, a lot of people don't even bother changing it.
Absolutely.
So it's not like it's going to stop you from working.
Right. Absolutely. I'm just all about being pretty. You know how that is.
Well,
Dale,
you've done a wonderful job of that.
Dale, did you have a comment regarding the kits?
Well, I was just saying, if it takes 15 seconds a kit for him and he's got 1,000 kits, how many minutes would that be? Quite a few. So you are going to have a project to do that. There's no doubt. That's all I wanted to say. I didn't want to slop it off and say it's going to be simple. It's going to be some work you have to do, especially on those large kits, to get them right.
And you can do it whenever you want. It's not like you have to do them all on the first day or second day. In fact, there's a lot of things, and we'll be covering this also in the third webinar. With the accounting, because it's SQL again, we get to backdate anything we want. You can always do it later when you have more time. So that's definitely a possibility. Appreciate the input there. So I'm going to keep going down on this, the Getting Started Guide. This is for our SE users. You guys are all MotorTraxx users. So here's the checklist for new shops, existing shops, and MotorTraxx converted data shops. Now this checklist is used to make sure you have everything in your system set up, properly. You need to address all these issues. The ones with the asterisk, these sections must be completed prior to writing your first invoice. So of course you have to have your company information, and let's be honest, Rhonda does most of that work for you when she does your conversion. God bless her. Repair order and parts invoice setup. Now, this is a big deal. This repair and parts invoice setup is in a video, and there are just so many different features. You may want to leave it all on the defaults in the beginning, but as you go along, you'll see that there's so many different options. And I, again, recommend you setting up your practice version doing this whole setup process. Once you got it set to what you want it to be, it takes literally less than 10 minutes. Actually, if I jump in and just put in what I would use as a user, it takes me about 2 minutes to go through and get this all set up for you. But I really do recommend you going through and setting this up in the practice version because you learn about features in MaxxTraxx that you may not know are there. And again, if you left on your defaults, you'd be fine. This workstation printing and miscellaneous setup info, just again, like 2 minutes, not even, of setup that needs to be done before you write that first invoice. Most important, you need to set up your sales tax rate. Like I said, I've seen one shop that went along 3 weeks and was putting in the wrong sales tax rate. Kind of an issue. And also, when you have open invoices in MotorTraxx that convert over to MaxxTraxx, you actually do have to go into each repair order and just double-click. I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like. You just have to go into it, click on the miscellaneous tab, and reselect your tax rate. That's all you have to do. But you have to do it for each one of them. So that is one of the tasks that you're going to need to do. I just want to be real clear about that. And then employee permissions. This mostly is just setting up your employee records so you can select their initials for labor codes. That's really all you have to do. You can set up all their payroll, all their, everything later, all their personal information. But literally this takes, I don't know, probably 5 minutes, 10 minutes to get through the whole thing if you guys are familiar with it. And if you are an accounting user, if you're going to be using MaxxTraxx Corporate, you need to put in your fiscal year start date, which 90% of the shops are January 1st anyway. Default account posting, again, I'd say easily 80%, and correct me, Rex and Dale, 80% of the shops just leave it on the defaults. There's some shops that do some customization here, but I think maybe more 90% don't have to worry about it. And then product codes. If you guys are using those customized product codes, you do have to set up your general ledger and add in those custom general ledger account numbers, and you have to reassign the general ledger account number to your custom product codes. So to be real upfront with this, if you have a lot of customized product codes, this is a little bit more work, but I still think you can have it done in less than a half an hour. Now, everything else in here, you can pretty much set up along the way. So you can set up security whenever you want. Your customer sources, you can leave as the defaults. Your repair order statuses, you can leave as defaults. But you have a lot of options here on how to customize the system. Now, an important thing to notice on this checklist here is the parentheses. Now, this is where I want to introduce the user manual. You'll see these parentheses say C under setup. It says company information, C under setup. So now I'm going to open up the MaxxTraxx user manual. So here's the user manual, and I would go under setups and expand it in company information. I'm going to click on that. And here's how you do it, step by step. This tells you what to press, what to click on the left side, and this on the right side tells you why you're doing it. So let's look at another one real quick. Let's say, let's say this one, for example, product code, C under new user setup. So I would click over my user manual, click on new user setup, and product code. And this will tell you, this gives you an intro of what this is for, and this will tell you how to do it. So this is very, very simple how to use this user manual. It's divided up kind of the same way that MaxxTraxx is divided up. You got your service counter, you got your parts counter, and then the parts manager. These two are the buttons. Let's show you in MaxxTraxx real quick. Here's your service counter, everything on the service counter, and everything on the parts counter. Okay, and then the rest of the user guide, the user manual here, it will follow the all the drop downs across the menu bar. Parts manager, marketing, banking, payroll, and you'll see in MaxxTraxx it says parts manager, banking, payroll, so it follows this right across. So, honestly, I tell you, there are a ton of people that just don't use user manuals. Me, I am a user manual kind of gal. But what we've also done, I'm so excited to introduce, is we have created training videos. our goal was to take every procedure, which we have about 200 of them, every single procedure you have here, accounting, how to manage your chart of accounts, do everything and create a general journal entry, we're creating videos for. So I'm going to jump out to our website real quick. And under training, under the training tab on our website, we have video training. And what we've done is we've put in 65 training videos, and we have 200 scheduled for this library. And you just click on these. Let's see, write a check, for example. And you, takes a second. The first time takes a little bit to load. After it loads the first time, it pops right up. It just, I haven't loaded this up for a little while. Come on. Of course, now it's really taking a long time for me. Could be my internet. I've been having internet problems all week, guys. It's been ugly. Okay, see, it still says it's downloading. Oh, I'm getting an error. Yeah, I'm getting a blocked problem on here, guys. You should not have a problem, and it may be also because I'm on the GoTo webinar right now. It may be blocking me out. But once these load up, I'll double check this, guys. You just click on play, and yes, you get to listen to yours truly talk through each one of those procedures, and I'll give you hints and tricks and that kind of thing in each one of these videos. But this whole library, like I said, we're building on all the time. You can see we've got a lot in the repair order writing section. And by the way, what we're going to be covering on webinar number 4 is setting up your company. And this video, so it just come up for me, talks about setting up your company. It talks about just those things that have an asterisk next to them. The ones that have to be set up before you write a repair order will show up in these videos. And, of course, now I'm the lucky one. They're not coming up. So let's just jump back here to my user manual. This is a checklist. And now I want to go into...
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is Jennifer at European Motors. On the
Hi.
employee permissions, are you?
Yes.
Is there a way in the new system to set up to where certain employees only have access to certain sections, say, for instance, certain payroll features, whatever it may be?
You got it. Under setup, under security groups, this is how many. This is how many options you have. We have the setup section, the accounting section, merchandising or marketing setup, miscellaneous. Look at all this stuff. System utilities. This is all the service counter, what you want them to have access to, the parts counter. Then you have inventory, which has a gazillion things. And what you do is you create as many different levels. Here, it comes default with 4. But Jennifer, you can add a custom one and say, this is just for, I don't know, my marketing person. Let's say I have a full-time marketing person who doubles as a shuttle person. That's what we had. That's why I'm using it as an example. And say, I want her to have access of just this, this, this. So you could create as many as you want. Now, some people have said, well, why don't I create it for each individual person? Well, let's say you want to add 1 or 2 permissions. You don't want to go into each name and do it. So we try to group it by, job title or something like that. Great question. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Good question. And so, again, I talked a little bit, this is buzzing through the Getting Started workbook. We talked a little bit about the shop information. This is mostly for new shops because a lot of the stuff actually comes over for you. But the reason why I came up with this was when I started using MaxxTraxx, I actually had a spiral binder that I filled in all this information when I set up MaxxTraxx, and I just referenced it from a couple of years ago, and this is how I came up with this. And it tells you company information, what's your shop labor rate, what's your average labor cost per hour, supply charges. A lot of people charge supply charges outside of California, all that kind of stuff. Add-on charges like hazardous waste or tire disposal, that's all in here. So it just gives you an area to fill this stuff in. Now, either you can actually print this out and fill this in, or know that if there's something here, you're like, estimate disclaimer. I guess I better write that in my MaxxTraxx somewhere. So this kind of is a nice guide to just tell you, hey, guys, you got a section that you need to fill in, like what's your warranty? So instead of filling it in here, you just know that you have to go into the system and do that. And let me go to the beginning of this section. This is under Setups and under RO and Parts Invoice Setup. So it tells you exactly where in MaxxTraxx you actually fill in that information. Make sense? So again, just go ahead.
I'm sorry. Did you say that you were going to be sending a copy of all of this stuff to each person's email too?
Yes. Everybody that registered for the webinar, I'm going to go ahead. And what I do is after every webinar, a lot of you folks that probably haven't been on our webinar series before, because we do them every Wednesday, usually about this time, is I send a follow-up email to see, you know, if any questions come up during the webinar that I can't answer, which, let's be frank, happens a lot. I get the answers for you, and then I send an email afterwards answering those questions and then soliciting feedback. If anybody had additional questions or wanted clarification or training on something we discussed in the webinar, and I'm asking you right now because I do every time, we also appreciate your feedback. Was this helpful? Would you want clarification, that kind of thing? And I often send whatever materials we're talking about in the webinar, I send in that email as well as an attachment. So that's just kind of how the webinar process works. So yeah, I'll get this over to you guys. So you'll have time to review this on your own time. I've put, like I said, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in this guide, and I think it really will make your experience a lot better if you get a chance to review this Getting Started workbook. And at the very end of it, like you said, this is all just areas to fill in information specifically for accounting users, by the way. And then the last page of this Getting Started workbook is the release. Now what this is to install if you're a new user or convert if you're from MotorTraxx. And essentially, prior to scheduling the installation of that go live, remember we talked about a practice version, which of course you don't have to fill this out for a practice version, but we want to make sure you've completed the task and you're informed and prepared to use MaxxTraxx. And again, I say this because you never want to work as many hours as I worked at January 2008. It was unbelievable. It was tough. But here, if you read and you understand everything you have to do on the checklist, you know how to use the user manual, you know that some sections need to be completed before you write that first repair order, i.e. sales tax. You know, all your employees that will be using MaxxTraxx have received training. You know, Keith, for example, is going to, a lot of people do a train the trainer. They become the expert, and then they train everybody else in the shop or their other locations, which is fine. That you meet the minimum hardware requirements, and frankly, before we actually do the installation, and Rhonda usually is the one who does most of the installations, or you know, reconvert your data. She's going to check your requirements, and if your hardware doesn't meet the requirements, guys, she's not going to install it. And it's really to cover us, but mostly it's so you don't have a bad experience. And so that's, I hate to be a heavy on that one, but we do kind of hold that line. You need to have a backup system in place. Frankly, are we going to make you? No, but really, really strongly advise it. And then the last thing is just so you know that we have that online data backup that's available to you. And then for converted users, and I want specifically for MotorTraxx guys, you guys know that this is not a Windows-based MotorTraxx. You know, it's a tough thing to get through your head. You understand what's converted and what is not, and you understand, you know, some stuff comes over in a modified version, like your kits or your ARs and your APs. They come over as just one big chunk of information, one big huge invoice. You should definitely keep a copy of MotorTraxx. Some people just take their MotorTraxx and take it off the network and just load it on one workstation, so they can just go access it on a one workstation. Totally up to you. And guys, I cannot believe that I had 2 people ask me this. It just kills me now. No, we don't want you to use dot matrix printers with MaxxTraxx. I mean, there are some people that want to go to Windows just so they don't have to have a darn dot matrix printer taking away all their hearing. So pretty much any Windows-compatible inkjet or LaserJet printer will work. Not a big deal at all. So then we just have you sign this and send this in with your order form once you guys are ready to rock and roll. And you can just put in here, you know, when you're looking to have it, you know, when do you want to be installed? And once you fax this through to Rhonda, she'll let you know if she can get it done for you, and go ahead and get it going. So guys, any questions at this point?
No questions for me. All of that was really helpful.
Good,
yes,
good. So, great, guys. Well, everything that we've talked about, by the way, I'm going to jump back to our website. under training, we have that MotorTraxx to MaxxTraxx training page, which is the same thing as that, M2M from our homepage. First of all, I've got to update this Getting Started workbook to the latest and greatest I just showed you today. The order form is on here, so you definitely have pricing information. Now let's just take a peek at this real quick. Here's the order form you just need to fill out. You just need one-time charges, by the way, for anybody on this call. There's a data conversion fee. It's $129 for MotorTraxx data conversion. If you have been on this webinar or if you watched this archive webinar, you're going to hear me say right now that your code word is Orion. And Orion's my dog, but I've decided he's my world, and I'm using him as my code name. Anybody that's done training with me knows he's sitting right here next to me. And we waive that $129 if you guys just say on your order form, Orion. So we know that you've watched this webinar. So it's a way to encourage people to use the tools, to use these archive webinars and attend the live webinars, because let's be frank, the more guys you use the tools and you have the information up front, really means just a lot less tech support calls for us down the road fixing your data. So it's kind of self-serving, but we will definitely waive this for you guys, okay? Now, there's a support subscription. So right now, if you're using the full accounting, it's $119 plus as many additional workstations as you want. So let's say you have 3 total workstations and you're using the full accounting in MaxxTraxx. It's going to be $119 plus 18. So doing the math, what is that, $137 a month, and no $129 upfront fees. And no registration
now,
fees, by the way.
The MaxxTraxx CE, is that the corporate version?
Yes, corporate edition. Yeah, we've actually just kind of renamed the products. Yeah, we've just done that here in the last 2 weeks. Now, MaxxTraxx Service is just MaxxTraxx CE, frankly, without accounting. And MaxxTraxx Express, guys, this is MaxxTraxx Express is designed to be just single user. And we have a Windows product called MaxxTraxx SE that we released, gosh, I don't know, 7 years ago, probably. Doesn't have any accounting, doesn't have any online parts ordering, or maybe just with WorldPack. I need to double check on that. But this is just for a single user, this $49, which really, if anybody's on here with MotorTraxx as a user, you're probably not going to want to go with that. You want to go with service or corporate. Service is without accounting, corporate is with accounting. Real simple. And again, there's no registration fees for you guys. You don't have to pay these upfront fees. And because you're on the webinar, you don't have to pay the $129. So I think we're at $99 a month right now for MotorTraxx support. So you're really not going to that much more money. And you guys, I guarantee it, you will love this program. You will. I mean, I love my MotorTraxx, and I fought these guys literally for a decade. That, oh, I don't want to go Windows, I don't like it, I don't like what you're doing. Now, I'll be honest, I can't even imagine how I even ran our business on MotorTraxx. So, and I'm not a techie. You guys will definitely learn that as we go along. If I come in the morning and my computer doesn't work, I just go back to bed because I don't know what to do. I'm not technical, and this is not hard to learn. It just takes a little preparation. So this is a little bit about our order form. And here, by the way, is where you sign up for your online backup. So let me just double check a couple of last things I wanted to do. There is one procedure, and I'm going to talk about it on webinar number 4. It's called Cleaning Up Open Invoices That Are Not on Your Schedule in MotorTraxx. Believe it or not, because of some little bit of data corruption, something happens when you convert from MotorTraxx to MaxxTraxx. Sometimes it brings over open invoices that you don't even know are open. Okay, and we don't really figure it out until you're trying to restock parts tickets and select an RO to apply that restock parts tickets to. Now, right now you have no clue what I'm talking about, but you will after next week if you attend. So you can use that feature. We want you to kind of go through this process, and I'll send you this email as well. You may as well do it to your data now. It's not a big deal, but like I said, you want to have this cleaned up before you go live. And if you get a practice version, you're going to be like, whoa, how did these come up? I had one shop with like 200 open repair orders or open invoices. They didn't even know we're in the, like they had 5 on their schedule, but they had 200 in the background that were open. So we'll talk about that on webinar 4. But let's see, real quick. Next week we're going to cover writing repair orders, ordering parts online, which to me is the #1 most compelling reason to go to MaxxTraxx, and how to enter restock parts invoices. And my goal is to show you the workflow on MaxxTraxx. And I did find that it reduced my parts data entry, restocking parts tickets, by about 60%. I did most of the accounting and most of the parts data entry, all those little parts tickets all day long. And once I figured out, and I'll be honest, guys, I ran MaxxTraxx for 2.5 months before I ever even knew that feature was in there, because I unfortunately turned off that feature in the first hour, January 2nd, 2008. So I will show you guys how to do that. And then again, if you knew what the philosophy was behind MaxxTraxx, it makes it 300% smoother. The following week, 2 weeks from today, we're going to cover the daily sales and cash store report. We're going to go a little bit over banking, AP, AR, payroll, and the general ledger. Just so you know, there is no daily book in MaxxTraxx. And again, I'm going to share with you one of my very embarrassing stories 2 weeks from today about how the daily book and daily sales differ in the systems. And then the last webinar, which is going to be at the end of August, we're going to go over that setup checklist in detail, the one that's in the Getting Started Guide. We're going to go over this checklist in detail. And as I mentioned, guys, there is a training video that goes over, here is it, where is it? It goes over the ones with the asterisks in detail. I have a training video on the website right now. In fact, it is right, let's go back, under training videos. Get to the top here. Under video training, it's right here. You guys, it's kind of a cool one to watch as soon as you get your practice version, setting up your company. And we're going to be covering that a little bit. We're also going to double check if anybody has any questions on the order form and the release. And then I do want to prepare you a little bit for the MotorTraxx data conversion, because there is some cleanup you can do when you're going from MotorTraxx to MaxxTraxx, going the go live date, not just this cleaning up these open invoices, which you really want to do. But, sometimes people are like, you know what, maybe I want to clean up my labor codes, or maybe I want to dump some of my inventory I'm not using. Or, you know what some people do? They bring over their entire inventory and they zero out their quantities. So I'm going to talk to you about a lot of different options that are available to you when you do go live. We'll do that on the 4th and final webinar. And then, of course, answer any questions that you guys have. After you've attended a couple of these webinars and had a chance to look at some of the tools, the training and support tools, you might have some more questions for us. So that's kind of our goal. So, guys, how was this? Was this useful? Did you find this valuable?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely I found it valuable, and I'd just like to confirm again when you're going to update the switch manual, because I've got the older version and I studied that pretty hard, so I'd want to see the changes and differences.
Yeah, Rosemary, I'll have it this afternoon. I'll have it. Actually, go look for it tomorrow morning. So what's going to happen, I'm going to go ahead and produce this video. This will be an archived video on our website, and it's under the training link under archive webinars. And you'll see it here at the bottom. And let me just show you really quick. In addition to all those training videos we have these are other recorded archive webinars. Now, of course, the quality is not going to be as great on these as a training video because it's kind of a different format, but these are different features you can learn about how to do things in MaxxTraxx, and they're very interactive and a lot of good suggestions, especially under marketing. The marketing tools and the MaxxSpecs review, we had a lot of people do a lot of talking and give us a lot of different input about how they're doing marketing in their business. So these actually came out to be fantastic archive webinars. But I'm going to have one right here that says MotorTraxx to MaxxTraxx, and it'll list all 4 of these webinars you can go back to in reference. So that usually takes a couple hours to produce. I'll have that up. I'll have the user manual, not the user manual, the Getting Started Guide up, Rosemary, and I'll also send that follow-up email to you guys tonight if you have any questions, or if there's specifically anything you want me to cover in the next 3 webinars, because they're really for you. They're really to make this a smoother experience for you. And I'm just hoping you guys can capitalize on my silly, silly mistakes and my crazy experiences having gone through the exact same thing you're going to go through. Okay,
well,
guys.
you know, and that's exactly it, is that one of my sales guys does have a specific question about writing an RO, and so email that question to you so you can fit it in where it would make sense.
Absolutely. Next week, like I said, next week we're covering writing ROs and restocking parts tickets, and we're also going to touch on a little bit of online parts ordering. So what I typically recommend, if you guys have staff at your shop, I would say your service writer guys, your service advisors and parts people would probably want to be on next week's webinar. And then your bookkeeping, accounting people may want to be on the third one. And then, of course, whoever's the shop owner is typically going to be on the fourth one, because we're going to be talking about the nuts and bolts of the actual conversion, which you guys, of course, if it's your shop and your information, you're going to want to be intimately involved with. But that's what I recommend. And absolutely, if you have some things that you have questions about, yeah, I think I'm going to give you a really good idea about what it takes to get that RO started and out the door. We're going to go through, you know, soup to nuts. Brand new customer walks in the door, through cashing them out and taking their Visa card for $5,000 hopefully. So we're going to cover all that stuff next week. So yeah, send me some questions in that email, anything you guys want to specifically cover. And we're going to keep it the same, open forum, more than welcome to ask questions, and I really encourage that. And like I said, we now have, let's see, 24 people on the call, and it looks like, I don't know, 20 people are on speaker and microphone. So if you guys want to ask questions, which I really encourage you to, especially during next week's webinar, just make sure you click on telephone instead of microphone and speakers and dial in, and that way it's real clear, because there's a few people, I'll be honest, I had to actually mute during the call because I got feedback from the speakers. Okay, guys, we're going to call it a day. Thanks for your participation, and I'll get that email out to you. I look forward. Oh, and just so you know, we had 25 people register. Please do go to our website. Let's see. Go to our website, back under the MotorTraxx to MaxxTraxx training tab, or from the home page. Click on the M2M. Come on, go home. Click on the M2M, and then click on these, just like you did on this first one. Click on these additional 3. And go ahead and get registered so we know who's going to be there. This also tells me to wait a few extra minutes in the beginning if I know that 25 people registered, so that if you're running a little bit late, we'll wait till everybody gets on the call, okay? You guys have a great day. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Bye for now.
Bye.